Alright guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. You might have seen that day one Guntersville video in which Thomas and I caught quite a few fish. So I wanted to go over kind of what we did. We fished that morning with Mr. Don Johnson, who was our fishing guide there on Guntersville. We launched out of Seabold, and we did some things that were a bit, I'll say, abnormal, or not exactly what I expected, but it produced and we caught fish. And then we replicated the pattern that evening because we only had the morning with him, and you saw the results. We caught some fish. I think that one big one went 4 1/4. Don actually caught a 5 something that morning with us, and so I just wanted to walk through what we were doing, go through some of the options, so you guys can replicate this and catch fish. So what we did was we were throwing a weightless Senko. This is the Yamamoto 5-inch Senko, green pumpkin, black flake, just about as simple as it gets. I think you can even get these at Walmart, but we were rigging them wacky with the wacky tool, which if you don't know, you take the Senko, you put it in the tool, you pull the O-ring down, put it just a couple notches there below the egg sac, and for that trip, because we were fishing in grass, we were using the, I think this is an Owner Mosquito, or I can't remember, Sniper finesse hook. I think this is a number 2 or a number 1. Normally around here in East Tennessee, we'd throw something like this is the Gamakatsu, this is the finesse with the weed guard. As in Tennessee, we'll throw it around a lot of laydowns, and this will keep you from getting hung up. Also, if you're skipping under docks and such. But we weren't doing much of that there, and that weed guard would get in the way of the grass and get hung in the grass. So going with just that standard finesse style hook worked out. You'll notice at the beginning of the video, Thomas lost a couple of fish there, and the reason for that, at least I think, is we were using a Nico style mustad hook, and I've not had issues with that thing in the past, but for whatever reason we both lost a few fish on it, so we switched out and that completely went away. That's also why, to Thomas's credit, he snapped his line, because we were basically trying to see if it was the hook, and so he was trying to bury the hook. He only had a uni to uni leader knot, so we stopped, and as you saw in the video, I sat and tied him an FG knot, and we didn't have any more issues with that. But so the weightless Senko was a big player, and again, you could throw it no weed guard, you can throw it weed guard, and another option is, I've got one sitting right here. You can throw it on this Gamakatsu finesse. It's actually a weighted wacky head, and that allows you to fish it a little bit faster. You can cover a little bit more water. Is it as effective in shallow water? Probably not. Just because it sinks a little bit faster. Not a lot, but a little bit faster. But if you're fishing out in 5, 6, 8 foot of water, this may be the ticket. And I've thrown it a little bit, and what I like is to throw the weighted wacky on a worm that doesn't have as much salt as the Gamakatsu. And the reason for that is the Gamakatsu, just rigged wacky by itself, no weight, sinks maybe 1 foot every 3 seconds or so. And you put that weighted head on it, and it falls pretty quickly. So I like the non-salt impregnated stick baits for that. What is it? The Yum Dinger. There's a million of them out there. I think the Big Bites has one. Sorry if you hear some noise back here. We've got Jax on the boat with us. He's enjoying a bone, and we're just in the garage doing some tackle prep. The Yum Dinger, you can rig that on that weighted hook, and it's a different presentation. And if you do that, for example, you see I've got this is actually, I'll show you that, the VMC crossover rings. You can see it on this guy. That's a green pumpkin crossover ring, and what that allows you to do is if you put these O-rings on there, it rigs perpendicularly the hook to the stick bait, whereas if you rig it with the crossover, you can do either perpendicular or parallel. And I feel like the perpendicular rig gives you a little bit better hookup ratio. As you can see, that's perpendicular, and so when you snap it through the water, the worm will come up and then it'll float down like that. And these non-salt impregnated stick baits actually have a little bit more action as they're falling, so they'll flutter. It's a nice presentation. So that's one way we call them, the wacky rig. Throwing it out. We were parking the boat in 7 to 8 foot of water, throwing up in island tops and points and secondary points, throwing up in 4 to 5, dragging it out to that 6, 7, 8 foot of water, and that's where we were getting bit. Thomas also caught a few on a Texas rigged Z-Man goat. You can also use the Zoom Z-Crawl. We were just throwing green pumpkin color, but basically put you a 2/0, 3/0 hook on there, maybe a 3/16 ounce weight, throw it out, lift your rod tip up, let it fall. The legs have a lot of fluttering action. You can drag it and they seem to eat it no matter what you were doing. So that's another way we caught them. And then caught a few on shaky head. We were using trick worms and green pumpkin color, and finally caught a few on the Ned, believe it or not. These are all finesse presentations. You get to Guntersville, you want to throw power baits, traps, you want to throw frogs, you want to throw crankbaits, spinner baits, and we did some of that in the morning, mainly spinner baits, but I don't know if it was a combination of the weather that they were seeing at the time or the pressure that area gets, but I mean this really played out for us and played well into helping us catch fish. So through that Ned, and then that's pretty well it. We tried a bunch of other stuff while we were there. We caught, like I said, a couple on the spinnerbait early in the morning. We were actually using, believe it or not, the Terminator P1 and a color similar to that. You'll see Thomas caught a spinnerbait trip late in the day. Our guide really said that the spinnerbait bite, or moving bait bite at least, really only played kind of the first hour or so of daylight and maybe the last hour or so of daylight, and we saw that to play out as well. That's really how we caught the majority of the fish. Now let's talk about setups and what I was throwing them on. Generally in our area, I'll throw the wacky rig on a medium power rod, maybe a medium light, depending on how you define that. But and that's what I had set up when we went down there. And because we were throwing into grass, I made the switch to a medium heavy, and that seemed to make a bigger difference in ability to set the hook, maybe not horse the fish out, but just put a little more pressure on them to get them away from that grass so they didn't get bogged down in it. This rod I was throwing the Ned on. This is the Dobbins Champion 732, the DC 732, so this is the Champion model, like I said, and I've got that on I've got that paired up with a Vanford 2500. It's got a nice smooth drag, and I've got 10 pound. I actually went to Suffix braid on this. That's all I could get at the time, and I'm pretty pleased with it. 10 pound braid to I think this is a 10 pound leader. I think the leader is Seagar Yellow Label, being Vizex, and tie that with an FG knot, connect the two. And then the Ned, you know, I've been toying around with the Ned rig here recently, and I was throwing too heavy of a weight initially. This is, I'm not sure of the weight, but it's really small. A friend of mine, Chris Van Osdale, makes these, and I've got that paired up with the small, the Finesse TRD, green pumpkin color, just as plain as it gets, and just dragging that through the weeds. It get caught in the weeds some, but if you eased your way through there and snapped the rod right, it really didn't get bogged down too much, and it produced some quality fish. Now the wacky rig setup, like I said, also I switched to a medium heavy style rod. This actually has a shaky head on it right now. But this is the Fluger President XT. This is the Dobbins Fury. This is the 702. This is what I'd normally throw it on around here. This is the medium action rod. 702 stands for 7 foot long, and 2 is 2 power, so it goes from 0 to 4, 5, 6. And this is like a medium heavy. This is like a medium power rod. Also threw the Wacky Rig on this, the 2 power, medium power, and then I picked up I've got a 703, which is a 7'3" power, a bit heavier. It's like a medium heavy. And again, I've got all these on 10-pound braid to, depending on the application, anywhere from 8 to 12-pound leader. So my lighter rods, the 2 powers, I'd go with an 8 or 10-pound leader. On my 3 power rods and medium heavies, I'd go with a 10 to 12-pound leader. And again, that's the 10-pound braid. And that's pretty much what we did. It was plain Jane and stupid simple, and it worked. We caught a lot of fish. We tried moving baits, and it didn't really play out. So I'd recommend throwing that Wacky Rig Cinco. You pond fishermen, you guys maybe that, especially what I found is you can't get a bite, throw finesse, and everybody says it, not everybody does it, but if it's bluebird conditions or you've been out there for an hour and a half, you're covering a lot of different patterns, different areas, you feel like there's fish in there, slow down a little bit. Pick you up a Ned, pick you up a shaky head, pick you up the Wacky Rig, rig it however you want, and just drag it around. Slow down. A lot of folks want to go out and move, cover water, and that's effective. Yes, it is effective, but if you're in areas and you feel like you ought to be getting bit and you're not, slow down. At least see if you can find the fish. And once you find them, maybe you can develop something different. But that's the biggest thing that I took away from this. And that's another thing I want to touch on is how to get better at fishing. Not to say that I'm any kind of good or anything like that. Just learning. And that's what I enjoy about it sometimes is the learning process, the chess match, and finding the fish and knowing what they want. And that's what fishing consecutive days teaches you. Is we're in an area where we're catching them like crazy. I should say like crazy, but we're catching them pretty good on Monday, and then Tuesday we go back to the same area and we can't catch them. Same areas. Weather had shifted. It was a little bit post frontal, and we had to slow down even more and try new areas. The wind was howling. That's a whole other thing you'll see in day 2 and 3, but we still were able to catch them with these finesse techniques. They just weren't chewing like they were before. So that's kind of how we caught them in Guntersville. And I'm going to be putting a day 2 and day 3 video out here soon. I'm probably going to combine the 2. It was hard to film. The wind was crazy, and so be looking for that video. So just to recap, we threw the Wacky Rig. You can throw it no weed guard. You can throw it weed guard if you're going around some cover like lay downs, docks, skipping under docks. You're going to want that weed guard. If not, you're going to grab on the pilings and such. Also through the shaky head, either the trick worm or the Net Baits T-Max 7-inch worm, and that's a 1/8 ounce owner ultra head with a 4/0 hook. That's a pretty good all-around weight. You can cover shallow water, you can cover deep water. And then some alternatives is use that weighted Wacky Rig, and the baits, Yamamoto Cinco, green pumpkin, Yum Dinger. This is, I think, Alabama something, green pumpkin on top, June bug on bottom, and then that Z-Man goat, and then the Ned Rig with the green pumpkin finesse TRD. Anyways, guys, I'll be putting out the day 2 and 3 video here soon, and tune into that. Let me know what you think. And sorry about that. Jackson's getting fired up over here. And we'll be seeing you next time. Thanks, guys.